Things we wish Jesus hadn't said. My name is David Madison, the 22nd of August 2020, and this is episode 35 in a series of videos on that topic. I have a graduate degree in theology and a PhD in biblical studies, but I must say Mark Twain got it right that the best cure for Christianity is reading the Bible. So let's take a close look and see why Mark Twain was absolutely correct. Some people like to claim that they belong to Jesus. They may not think this means what the Apostle Paul thought it meant. Those who belong to Christ Jesus, he wrote, have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Many Christians, I'm sure, would agree that this is one of the things we wished Paul hadn't said. But belonging to Jesus means you want to do what Jesus wants. You like the thought of being one of his modern-day disciples, and naturally you wonder, what would Jesus do? In the very first video in this series, I discussed Luke 14:26, in which Jesus reports that Jesus said you have to hate your family to be one of his disciples. Well, here are a couple of other Jesus-Luke quotes that just won't do. Luke also set the bar pretty high with this Jesus quote in chapter 14, verse 33. None of you can become my disciple if you do not give up all of your possessions. Well, maybe Jesus just meant his original disciples, right? Here again, modern Christians can find many excuses why this doesn't apply to them. And they're absolutely right, because Jesus did not anticipate a world in which there would be Christians 2,000 years later. He thought the world was about to end with the kingdom of heaven in place. Who would need possessions then? Of course, Jesus was simply wrong about this. And Christians, as much as anyone else in our consumer-driven modern economy, like their possessions. Still, I do wonder if they give any thought to this piece of Jesus' advice when they head out to buy their flat-screen TVs. But there's another Jesus quote that is really hard to swallow. In Luke 16, Jesus is arguing with the Pharisees, and this is one of his retorts in verse 15. You are those who justify yourselves in the sight of others, but God knows your hearts. For what is prized by human beings is an abomination in the sight of God. This is another clue that there is too much cult fanaticism in Luke's gospel. Well, all the gospel writers were propagandists for the early Jesus cult, but Luke was clearly over the top. I guess it makes sense that a man who thought the world was about to end would say, what is prized by human beings is an abomination in the sight of God. But this is really a terrible thing to say. God created human beings but despises what humans cherish. Neither Jesus nor Paul showed much interest at all in the things that enrich human life, at least from our perspective, the things that are prized by human beings, for example, art and literature. The only literature that Jesus and Paul cared to discuss was the Old Testament. But they lived in a world enriched by art produced by the Greeks and the Romans. They don't mention it. But no matter, the world was about to end. We're very lucky that so many humans have ignored this Jesus quote. The great creators, the writers and composers, painters, the wonderful athletes who have achieved brilliance. What is prized by human beings is an abomination in the sight of God? Well, Jesus was from small-town Nazareth, so we can't be too surprised.